I'm making this video because I've been in Belarus now for, I believe, about 2 years. Yeah, so it's like, okay, let's do a bit of a reflection video on my time here. And this will be very useful if you're interested in this area, interested in Russia, interested in Belarus, possibly even Baltic states or whatever. There's obviously cultural overlap everywhere. I would say, so when I came here, I wasn't into the main categories of guys that come here, right? Like I wasn't the hyper political guy, the hardcore kind of love Russia, hate US. I'm not this kind of guy. That wasn't my motivation. My motivation wasn't really girls either. I don't see, well, at that stage I didn't see a longer term future in this part of the world. I just came here because of COVID, essentially. I was living overseas, COVID started, really quick story. I ended up getting conned into going back to Australia, and then they locked me up for a year and a half. But I got out, and Belarus was the easiest place to come to, so that's basically why I'm here. And I had a buddy that was here. I didn't come for him, but he gave me intel like, yeah, it's fine, man, it's just, everything's fine. I went to the same university he went to, and yeah, just verified, you know what I mean? So I was like, all right, let's just do it, fuck 6 months or whatever in Belarus. It is, right? So I've already been to a few of the ex-Soviet countries or Eastern Bloc countries in the EU, places like Romania, Czech Republic, these kind of places. So I'm like, yeah, it can't be that different, right? So I came here, and to be honest, the first year, I really didn't get my teeth stuck into the place. I really just lived the stereotypical expat life. I was just going to uni, hanging out with some foreign mates, not dating seriously, just living this temporary island refugee life, right? That was kind of my mentality. So I had a lot of surface level observations. I knew some local people, but I hadn't really put it all together. Yeah, I was noticing things, I could see things, but I couldn't, I had pieces of the puzzle, but I hadn't put them together yet. That's the best analogy to give. And my initial impressions were, it's very clean, it's very safe, people are very polite and honest. Yeah, the same things you look at on day one is the same thing you still think on day 300, right? That's the reality of it. Unless you dig a bit and you get to know these people a little bit more. So I'll give you some positives and some negatives, yeah? Because I think that day to day, Belarus is very livable. As you can see all the time, I'll turn you around. Yeah, the infrastructure, this is obviously like the main drag, Independence Avenue, obviously it's fancy. This would have been a bit of a, you know, swing your dick around communist street essentially back in the day when the Soviet Union and the USA were kind of competing on these things. So yeah, not every street looks like this, believe me, but nonetheless, it's very comfortable, Belarus. It's everything works well. The bureaucracy is a bit shit, but you know, you want shit, mate, go to Russia for bureaucracy. Не работает, right? So yeah, although the bureaucracy will annoy the shit out of you, and just the constant inconsistency of what you're told and how it really works and how it works different with this guy's in charge and blah blah blah, like this stuff will wear on you and everyone gets shitty at it. But yeah, the secret is, I mean, once you're here you don't have to do much, right, in that regard, so it's fine. But yeah, if you want to deal with the bureaucracy, good luck. But as I say, it's not terrible versus Russia. So yeah, things are comfortable kind of in this short-term feeling, right? Things are comfortable, but I think the more I dig into it, the more I see, man, this place is not Western, it's not Christian, not that I'm Christian, but we are, from the Anglosphere, we have a Christian base, whether you want to identify as it or not, but you know, we value honesty, for example, you know, just being kind and decent to each other, this kind of shit, right? They don't really have that here. They have a communist version of it, they have a Stalinist version of it. So they've kind of had their culture already reset to a more globalist kind of feminist mentality, right? So in a lot of ways, they're more liberal and less traditional than Westerners are. Shock horror, who would have thought? But Ben, the girls are beautiful. But yeah, that doesn't actually mean anything. In fact, this is going to be really controversial, right? Nah, maybe it's too much for you guys. Because we're told in the West, right, So feminism has actually implanted a lot of ideas in our head over the years. One is that if girls are beautiful, it's because of the patriarchy. Right? Men force them to look good because we objectify them, right? But what you actually notice when you get away from this programming and actually pay attention to the real world, it's the exact fucking opposite. The countries where girls look good, i.e. they put a lot of effort into their appearance, blah, blah, these are the ones where women have the most power. These are the ones where you have absolute dysfunctional dating markets, very little marriage, very little children, and rapidly declining societies. South Korea is another example of that, by the way. Rapidly declining, right? If a place like Belarus is patriarchal, and believe me, it's matriarchal, if it was patriarchal, you'd have some fucking kids. You know, you wouldn't have 1.2 kids per woman, right? Women would actually have an interest in having children, which they really don't, on average, to be honest. I mean, they typically will just tick the box, have one, tick the box. There'll be a few that'll have two, and maybe you get to somewhere there'll be three, I don't know where. To the people who get the free apartments when they have lots of kids. But the reality here is that it's really deeply feminist and deeply communist. There's not really a sense of community. There is that surface level Soviet, we are Belarusian and we act this way, and that's very pleasant. I do like that about Belarus. You do have a lot of strict surface level behaviours that you must adhere to, which makes everything a lot more comfortable. But it's also very superficial in a lot of ways as well, which is kind of complicating because there's kind of benefits to it. So let me concrete that for you. So, for example, people are very civil and polite and they look good and da-da-da. But if you don't, like, dress well, for example, you know what I mean, people think a lot less of you, and not just like a subconscious judgment, but a very specific judgment of your value as a person, you know what I mean? So this is, coming from a country like Australia, built on more egalitarian views, where we don't even care that much about how we dress. This is very different, right? Let me zoom a little bit for you guys. So the average European would see this culture as very superficial, right? And again, I'm getting to the nitty gritty of it now. Yeah, there are some positives here, yeah, like long-term positives. I've got several very close Belarusian friends, but they don't get close easily, yeah? It takes time. But when they're close, they are close. This is true. But I think most expats don't really get close because they're just busy doing their own thing in their own kind of little world. Whereas this second year, I've consciously spent very little time with expats, very little time, and focused more on hanging out with Belarusians and understanding what the fuck is actually going on here. So yeah, as I say, it's more of a kind of a communist, feminist culture. Now, let me clarify that, because you think, oh, hang on a minute, but the girls have long hair, they're not feminists. You have to look at the waves of feminism. So waves 1 and 2 were about the woman not really respecting the man, not being that interested in the man, and working, right? Because, communism was, I don't want to call it like a form of slave economy, but it kind of was. Like, despite all the pretty words and whatever, in the end, it was just kind of like a slave economy, right? But just an industrialized one. And they were able to industrialize because of that power that they had. So that's kind of a positive thing. If you think industrialization is positive, then they were able to kind of force it here, which did increase their living standards initially anyway. It says Gorky Park, or also called Detsky Park as well, Children's Park. You can see lots of little eating kiosks. Can't quite see the Ferris wheels popping up there, but you can't quite see it for the trees at the moment. So yeah, the first couple of waves of feminism are actually stronger here. Although third and fourth wave of, women should be slutty and women should be fat and whatever else, this stuff hasn't come in here at all. So it depends the wave of feminism you're talking about. But interestingly, you can see here the social decay is happening 5x, right? 5x the speed of the West. This is what I find really interesting, and one of the main reasons why I don't want to be here long term, because I can see, one girl said this to me, and I agree with this entirely, that generational change in Belarus happens every 5 years, and she's fucking spot on. It's exactly what's happening here. They haven't got a strong base yet. Christianity is a strong base. Whether you believe in God or go to church, I don't care. But it gives you a strong base. It was a strong, comprehensive system of how to live your life and what to think. And it gives a community and a society a very strong and powerful base of interacting with each other. These people don't have that. They have Stalinism, yeah? So Christianity removed, Bolshevikism, wildness injected for a bit, and now Stalinism, or at the time Stalinism introduced. So you have this kind of situation where people are taught surface level behaviors, but are not necessarily taught why or how to interact or be with each other. So Christianity teaches a lot of how to interact with each other and core values, whereas communism, like social engineering through communism, taught more social surface level behaviors. So that's what you get here. You get a lot of surface level behaviors. Now, in saying that, Belarusians are also actually honest and mainly trustworthy, especially for this part of the world, right? I won't pick on any particular countries because they're involved in issues at the moment, but you know what I'm saying. If you know this part of the world, you know what I'm saying. So I think that, Belarus is more feminist than Western countries in many ways. And that's a big part, because let's be honest, maths, feminism equals no children equals no society. Like that's the long-term trajectory, medium-term trajectory. So Belarus is already there. Even though as you look past, you'll think, gee, the girls look good. Oh, but they're feminine. No, they're not. They're not. They're just raised to be like men. Here, men and women are kind of the same, but actually not. It's actually women that are probably more masculine. Men are more feminine. What the fuck are you saying, dude? You don't know what you're talking about. These old Russian stereotypes of, oh, I'm Igor. Shut up, Vlada. Okay, I cook for you. Like this first of all is not Belarus. And second of all, it's 2024, right? So here in Belarus, the woman runs the ship. I'd say 80% of relationships, the woman is overtly the boss. And you just see it everywhere. Like even guys here who don't really know the culture very well, they make this comment to me. It's like, gee, the guys here are kind of docile, aren't they? It's like, yeah, they are. Women are the boss. Women are the boss here in most relationships. Yeah, it's a cultural thing. Like women are on a pedestal in this country. Look, maybe that's a good thing. Yeah, I'm just telling you how it is. Like I'm not saying there's any emotion, whatever. I'm just reporting what's happening here. So as a man, it makes life less comfortable. Yeah? Quite frankly, and I don't think that this model can last generations. And it's not lasting generations. And that's a big part of the reason why I don't want to commit to this country in the long term. It's dying. It's failing. The population is crumbling. Again, in the short term, it's a good option, yeah? It's comfortable, it's nice. The people are decent, man. You talk to a Belarusian, they'll help you. You know what I mean? You drop something, they'll pick it up for you and pass it to you. They're good people in a lot of ways, the Belarusian people, yeah? They're good people. But the reality is gender relations here are entirely fucked. And that's why you have a divorce rate higher than the West. Not enough children, divorce rate higher than the West. This is what you have here, right? Don't mess with this macro data. It tells you a summary of what's happening in society. So, Belarus is more feminist. And let me give you some examples. This is just silly anecdotes, but a few months ago, there's a wasp. I just got bitten last week. I don't want to get bitten again, motherfucker. This is a few months ago now, in Zavitskaya, which is like the nightclub area. I think they were Russians. I can't remember. Maybe they were local people, I can't remember. But they got caught banging in public, a guy and a girl, right? In the nightclub area, 3 a.m. I think they were actually married. I think they might have been Russians on holidays. I don't know, I can't remember. But anyway, they got caught banging. And very typical Belarusian style, the guy gets jail and the woman gets a fine. And of course we know that the man will pay the woman's fine. And I thought that is just such a nice summary of how the society kind of works. Even during, those famous times in 2020 that I've never spoken about overtly, even then, when they were doing, somewhat sizable arrests, but not really, compared to the number of people involved, but they weren't arresting women, yeah? It's just not Belarusian, women first here. It's very much a sim society. So, it sounds harsh, I'm sure. I'll go through this in other videos in some more detail at some stage, but it's not what you want to hear, so I don't tend to share this side of things very often. But that's kind of how it is. So yeah, literally during 2020, those famous events, they were only arresting men. Now subsequently they have arrested women as well when they found them to be ringleaders and whatever, right? They work out that some chick was running a Telegram group, and they find her, put tax charges on her, right? That's how it works. Then she'll get jailed. But day to day, when they were arresting people in certain situations, only men arrested. So that's kind of how it works here. Women kind of have a bit of a pass here, which you notice coming from an egalitarian society like Australia. You kind of notice that inequality and don't appreciate it. So yeah, this is kind of a problem. Also in the long term, related to that topic, the population here is really just shrinking, man. It's going down 100,000 every year, more than 1% a year. Like, there is no society. It's gone. Like, it's in terminal decline. Now, the government talks a lot about incentivizing children, financially incentivizing children, which is what every society does. Every society is doing the same thing, but every society is having less and less kids every year, right? So it's pretty obvious that, you know, the financial incentives don't do much. People want to, you know, you go on the left side, the globalist left side of the media, and they're saying, oh, we need more economic incentives to have children. There's not a shred of evidence that works for any more than 5 minutes. Like, it just doesn't have any effect. Like, the most minuscule effect is a cultural issue. So unless you want to address the culture, we're not going to turn this thing around, and your population will just shrink to zero, and that's what's happening here in Belarus. The population is just shrinking rapidly. Now, you also have people leaving because there is this weird thing enshrined here that it's the worst country in the world and they all want to go to Europe. Well, not all, but a proportion of them do. And if you just have 5 or 10% of your youth trying to do that, when you're already not having enough kids, you can see the big friggin' hole that's left. And what's going to happen in 20 years' time when there's no one of working age and there's a whole lot of babushkas? Who the friggin' hell's going to make all the stuff to support the economy? So I'm looking here and it's like, do I want to be a part of this? I've got another 40, 50 years left in my life, I would say. Do I really want to be a part of this kind of crumbling society? And as I say, living here in the short term is very comfortable. Very comfortable. It's a great place to live. But long term, although in saying that, everywhere's kind of unstable. I say that as yet another government was toppled by the world empire in Bangladesh in the last week or so. Everywhere's kind of unstable, right? So that's true, but they're not all in such a radical, sharp decline. And as I say, when you have this radical liberalism being forced on the world, those with the strongest base will survive the longest, and a Christian base will survive longer than a Stalinist base, yeah? That's why the social degradation here is happening faster than it would be happening in Australia. It looks a bit different on the surface. I know it looks a bit different. But as that girl said, generational change here is happening every 5 years. And a lot of these young people have been programmed with the Western liberal mindset very strongly. Yeah, there's no flags, rainbow flags everywhere, because at a governmental level they stop it. But the youth through education system, both university and high school, are absorbing it. Through Instagram, are absorbing it as well. So it's no people want to, Western guys want to fantasize that Belarus is some bastion of traditional values. It's just such bullshit. It's so far from the truth, you know. It's so far from the truth, honestly. There's elements of it, but there's elements in the other direction as well, and it levels out to not much, yeah. But nonetheless, you can speak your mind here if you want to. You can have a conversation about topics, and Belarusians love debating topics, man. They're just curious mindset Belarusian people, and that's one thing I really like about them. I've been a bit negative the last 5 minutes. Let me turn this around a little bit. You want to have an intellectual discussion? You want to have a critical discussion? Man, these fuckers thrive on it. It's fucking awesome. Like in Australia, people just want to talk about the weather and football for 95% of the time. Here, just go straight to the fucking heart of it, mate. I don't care about your day. Tell me what you think about blah, blah, blah. Like, it's, you know, and then they listen mainly, there's exceptions, but they mainly listen and engage, and they're very good at listening patiently, engaging. They don't rant at you. You do get some feminist ranters and stuff. It happens here too, obviously. It's not happening in a vacuum, but generally speaking, people will be patient and discuss things. And they really thrive on that, and so do I. I really love it. That's one really good positive thing about Belarus. Whereas if you want to go to a country where people are maybe a bit lower IQ and not so interested in life, that part of your life will suffer a bit, right? So yeah, if you like that kind of conversations, it's a bloody good place. So yeah, I think if you want to stay here long term, you'd have to do what I've done in my second year, and that is to really integrate with a lot of people. And that doesn't mean that you've met someone a couple of times and spoken on the surface. It means you spend time together. It means you hang out a lot. It means you talk about each other's business with each other. You know what I mean? It means you actually create a bond and create real friendship, which is hard to do. Once you pass that kind of university age, wherever you are in the world, it's hard to make meaningful friends. I mean, I think we all know that. But these people, as closed as they are in a lot of ways, like on the surface, they're very open, friendly, but they're actually quite closed. But if you do, as I say, if you do get closer to someone here, they'll be very loyal and get people with the right attributes. I think it's, in some ways, it's easier to make friends here than it might be in the West. But yeah, it's just a bit more complicated, obviously. You'd also look, there's heaps of freaking older guys here that have lived here for 10 years that don't speak Russian. And look, you probably don't need to, but as I say, the average expat, I mean, their life is essentially, they come here at say 50, they meet a 40-year-old divorcee who speaks English, they then just live with them, marry them, have one or two expat mates, and just don't do much. Like that's your typical expat life, right? So if you want to live like that, it's fine. If you're a bit more of a loner or just whatever, then that's fine. But for me, I'm not, right? And I see that I would really, really need to speak Russian fluently here to really live a proper full life in the long term. And that's no easy feat, yeah? It's not because Russian's that hard. Yeah, it's a bit hard. That's true. But finding the time to learn it while you're trying to do everything else in your life, especially when you start a family, it's just not going to happen. Like, you can have all the well-meanings in the world, but it's just not going to happen. And having a solid 18-month level of B2, in a lot of ways, it's still not even speaking Russian at all, because you don't know the slang, you don't know the lingo. I mean, it's language morphs aggressively in younger generations. And I hear this, a mate of mine who's a Belarusian guy, how old is he? I think he's 35. He said to me, there was these teenagers talking on the train, and we were on the metro together. And he's like, I have to be honest, I didn't understand half the words they were just using. So he's a Belarusian guy, raised here and whatever. So kind of interesting. But yeah, so after 2 years, look, I think it is a pleasant place to live, and it's a lot cheaper. Food supply is good. There's enough things to do, yeah? There's enough things to do here. You just got to find them. Get out of your expat bubble and kind of find them. So I think that's all fine. I think if you want to live a Western lifestyle, that's all fine. I think the winter ground on me. The first winter, I'm like, yeah, man, I lived in the States for 3 years. Fuck, this isn't cold. I live in Michigan, motherfuckers. This isn't cold. I live in New York. Yeah, fuck, this is nothing. So I got through the first winter with a bit of a gung-ho attitude. And then second winter hit me. Yeah, I was just felt a lot less happy here, for sure. The weather affected my mood a lot more than it did the first year. And this is what everyone says. That you kind of grin and bear it the first year or two, but it grinds on you. And it does, and that's why people in this part of the world have this underlying kind of miserable attitude. It's partly to do with the weather. I'm also looking across to Scandinavia, by the way. I'm not just talking about Soviet countries. It's not a Soviet poverty thing. It's definitely a temperature weather thing, right? Forget the word. This is the problem when you're mixing languages all the time. You start to lose more intricate vocabulary. So yeah, I think the winter grinds on you, man. I don't know how you get around that, to be honest. You kind of can't get around it. Like, yeah, okay, you can have a month or two in Turkey or something. That's fine. What happens when you got a wife and 3 kids, mate? You're going to pay for 5 seats to and from Turkey, blah, 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 blah. Trying to travel with a 2-year-old, a 4-year-old, a 6-year-old. Fuck, that's not a holiday, that's torture. So once you kind of got a family like that, you're locked down for a bit, which means you're locked down in the weather, that kind of gloomy, because it's gloomy here, yeah? Like, that blue sky, you don't see that all the time. I tell you what, you see that grey, darker grey, mixed with sometimes unpleasant buildings and dirty snow on the ground that hasn't melted for 2 weeks. And it's a grim environment, man. In the winter, it can be really bloody grim. But in the summer, it's lovely, man. Minsk summer is fantastic. I'm loving it at the moment, I have to be honest. I'm enjoying the 25 every day, 27, perfect. There's stuff to do, activities, everyone's lively. The city really comes to life, but it's really Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in that respect. In the winter, it really, it will just have this accumulative effect on your brain, for sure. Now, there are positives of the winter, and I think you've got to embrace those. For example, snow is fucking cool. You can make snowmen. You can throw snowballs. So, you know, this kind of stuff, you kind of got to embrace the positives rather than thinking, oh, it's cold. It's like, you know, it's kind of cool as well at the same time. So I think that was a big difference in the second year. Not enjoying the winter. Allowing it to kind of affect my mood, or seeing that it affected my mood more. And it seemed to, on its own, it doesn't affect you, but when you add it to other things, I found it had this kind of interactive effect, right? This is kind of what I found. Like, if something else was going wrong, just say, I don't know, you lost your job or something, right? And then the weather fucking multiplies at 4x. But on its own, if everything's perfect, then the weather's kind of okay. But as I said, it has this kind of multiplier effect on other negative things. What else have I got for you guys? That's probably it. I think it's a cultural thing, realizing that it's a Stalinist base here, not a Christian base. Realizing that it's in a lot of ways more feminist and certainly more matriarchal than the West. And that the family unit's broken up very easily. And, you know, even in the West, we still have this mindset of like staying together for the kids, because we know that the kids will have a better outcome if we stay together, unless the marriage is total shit. But if it's manageable, we'll stay together because we know it's better for the kids, yeah? They don't have that mentality here. Like, when the woman's had enough, she just leaves. She just doesn't care. Right? There's no thought at all. If the kid's 2 or 10 or 20, she doesn't care. My emotions say I'm leaving, so I'm leaving. Right? That's kind of how it works. So you have this kind of flimsy institution. I mean, it's flimsy in the West as well, and becoming more flimsy. And I know a lot of you guys watching this will be like, mate, things in the West are bad. And it's like, well, they are compared to the West 20 years ago, right? But don't get caught in the trap of comparing it to other countries. That's a different matter. Yeah, the West is in decline from a cultural point of view. Obviously, we're way more depressed. We're having less children, higher divorce, less friends. No one has any friends. Look at all the data around that. All the data around depression, mental health. Fucking hell, mate. Like, we are collapsing when you look at that stuff. We're not allowed to say that, of course, because, you know, we kind of know why it's happening. But that's happening. So you guys are right. But don't think that another country, because there's no litter on the street and the girls are slim, don't think that that country is perfect or good or even manageable, right? You can't make that assumption. It just doesn't work that way. The world is much more complicated than a Western model of conservative, diluted Christian values versus feminists kind of Western liberalism, right? This two-dimensional scale that we have in the West, and that increasingly is trying to force its way in everywhere as well. The rest of the world's more complicated. There's more dimensions going on. That's kind of what I've learned from being here. There's more dimensions. Yeah, Western liberalism's here, but honestly, I'd rather a girl here be a bit more westernized. She'll be a bit more human, a bit less selfish, a bit more thoughtful. You know what I mean? Like, it actually can be a positive thing here, depending on the type of girl, because you get a lot of girls who are hyper narcissist and very transactionally orientated. Yeah, a lot of girls here. Whereas in the West, you just don't get that many girls that are like that. Yeah, okay, the distribution curve is shifting that way slowly. Yes, fine, but you know, don't get caught in that YouTube echo chamber that tells you the West is fucked and girls only want money. It's bullshit. Bullshit. The average girl just still wants to meet the average guy when they're young and get together. It's the girls left on the dating market at a certain age that are shit, right? and they're maybe getting worse. But your average girl still in the West still just wants an average guy and gets together young and whatever, right? It's just how it is. But as I say, more and more are being left into the market, and the market's getting worse. the shelf market, the post-23 market is getting worse. Fair call. But here, look, you'd almost rather the girl is a little bit westernized, which is going to sound controversial because guys want to come here because it's less Western in their mind. Because they see that girls aren't fat, oh, it must be less feminist, right? Because they have this one-dimensional view of feminism as women being slutty and fat. That's the view of feminism. But feminism is going for over 100 years. And, some of these earlier parts of feminism are much stronger here. And as I say, that's why divorce is so high and the regard for family and community and everything is so low. Like, there's no community here, man. People don't talk to each other. Like, everyone has like one or two friends and that's it, man. Like, there's no sense of community at all. It's such an atomized mentality, and that all comes from Stalinism and the Soviet past. And now look, if you come here, people will be really smiley and friendly to you because you're a foreigner, right? But that's not how they actually are. That's the reality. I'm not saying it's bad or good, yeah? I know because people get butthurt and oversensitive and it's like, stop saying that about Belarus or whatever. And I'm mainly saying positive things about Belarus, but the reality is, this is a Western audience I'm talking to, which I understand. I understand both sides. I'm trying to bridge the gap here a little bit and stop guys having this kind of fantasy that Belarus is, America in the 80s. It's fucking nothing like it. It's nothing like it. It's not a two-dimensional scale here. It's not a two-dimensional scale. Yeah, it's much more complicated. Anyway, so look, after 2 years, I've kind of got sidetracked, but I get feedback that guys like when I go into detail a little bit. So there's a bit more detail for you. So after 2 years, how do I feel about Belarus? Well, I feel like it's good for short time, bad for long time. That's my overall thought about it. Depending how you want to live, of course, you might love it here and want to stay forever, but I think the benefits and the coolness and the value in staying here is very much front-loaded to the first few months or few years. I would say that. Now, would I rather live here or the West? I'd rather live here. Yeah, let me make that really clear. If I have Melbourne or Minsk, if they're my two choices, I'm choosing Minsk. Yes, Melbourne or Minsk are my choices, I'm choosing Minsk. But there's a whole world out there that operates a lot differently to Melbourne or Minsk, right? So, I would, if you've never been here before and you want to have a look, you can do that. But as I say, you get an excessively positive view on the place because of that foreigner effect. They're very polite, the foreigners on the surface, almost too much, to be honest. But yeah, at the core, they're very different to Westerners. Yeah, so So for me, look, I don't think I'll stay here long term. I don't think that it's an appropriate place to settle long term and to have a family. For the reasons I've mentioned and more, I think there's probably better options out there.